Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Hailstone here again, and today we're going to be continuing our watching of what does it take to earn the British Medal of Honor. If you haven't seen part 1 to this video, don't forget to check that out first, and you can find it either in the description or I'll post a link to it somewhere up above me. But for now, let's just continue on and learn a little bit more about this amazing medal and the amazing people who earned this medal.
Of the 400 South Staffs who fought here, only 100 would escape. Cain called it the regiment's Waterloo. Two of his close friends were among the casualties, and in his diary he wrote, "For the first time since childhood, tears sprang in my eyes. I turned away, swallowing hard, and with rage in my heart." It must have been a savage kind of rage, because on his way back down this road for more ammunition, he ran into a party of 5 Germans. And even though he was alone, he opened up with his Bren gun and killed all of them.
Wow. Wow. See, that's just, I don't know, that's insane. That somebody's like capable of doing that all by themselves, and I don't know, there's remarkable men, I'm sure, that earn this.
Later on, the easygoing married father of 2 wrote of the killings, "I cannot describe the surge of dreadful, unholy joy which I felt." When he got back, the battle scenes were horrific. He wrote, "We passed Taffy Williams, a grand little Welshman and one of my originals. Only his head and face were untouched. The rest of him was unrecognizable." And so, with his company decimated, Cain was ordered to retreat. He'd bagged 5 Germans single-handed, but that made him a soldier, not a hero. There was still no hint that this man would win a Victoria Cross. This, the world's ultimate medal, was deliberately designed to be simple. In fact, when it was unveiled in 1857, the critics were horrified. The Times called it poor-looking and mean in the extreme. People were used to medals like chandeliers, as big and as glitzy as firework night. It was always assumed that the grander the medal, the brighter it should be.
Right, that is actually something that I was thinking about when I first saw this medal back in part 1. I was like, that looks like a pretty, I don't know, basic, maybe not the right word, medal. And I suppose that looking at it now, that makes perfect sense to have it not be flashy and extravagant, if that makes any sense.
This is the actual prototype of the VC, made to Prince Albert's specifications, a simple cross. Now, when Queen Victoria saw it, she loved it. In fact, if we look on a real one, which I've got here, we can see the only change she made is to the bar. She added some laurel leaves and a little V, and that's it.
That's really cool. They have that little detailed V that holds the actual medal to the ribbon. I didn't notice that. That's really cool.
The highest award for gallantry. Strangely, the metal from which all VCs are made is not kept at the palace or under the Bank of England. It's to be found here at an army supply base near Telford in Shropshire. It's in these sinister buildings that the army stores its rifles, its machine guns, its artillery pieces, its nuclear and chemical warfare suits. 250,000 items with a combined value of £1.4 billion, enough to win a small war. Bear in mind that what you're looking at here is just one aisle. And there are 8 aisles in every unit. And there are 4 units in every building. And there are 20 buildings.
Wow, that's quite a bit of equipment there.
The security is fearsome. But even so, the most precious thing they have here is kept in its own safe. A safe with its own alarm and its own all-seeing CCTV camera. This is it. It's a lump of bronze from a Chinese-made cannon that was captured from the Russians at Sevastopol in the Crimean War. And it's from this lump of metal that all Victoria Crosses are made.
Wow, that is just awesome. Oh, geez, that's really cool. I wonder, wow. I don't know. I for whatever reason, I just think that's really cool how all the metal just comes from that little historical cannonball looking thing. That's super cool. I don't know why. I don't know. He said that. I thought it was neat.
Now, you'd expect the delicate job of creating a VC to be handled by a household name like Garrard's or Asprey. But no. Every time a new batch of medals is needed, a slice is peeled from the original lump and taken by military escort to a tiny jeweller's in London's Burlington Arcade. Hancocks have made the medal since the day it was created, and it's always given their craftsmen a bit of a headache.
It's made of very insignificant, valueless metal. The metal itself is, I suppose the right word is unstable. It's not nice metal, like pure copper or pure silver or pure gold or even pure bronze. It comes, as most people seem to know, from cannons which were captured. So it's already been used once, and the more often you use it, the less stable it becomes.
That's pretty neat. And I don't know if there's like a symbolism for that. Maybe they'll explain it in just a little bit, but I don't know. I can appreciate not having super high quality fine metals go into this metal. I think it almost says something.
Down in the vaults of this jeweller's, you will find 7 VCs, the last of a batch that was cast over 30 years ago. They're all unengraved. They're all waiting for an owner.
All VCs are going to look alike. But what makes them unique, of course, is the information on the back. The engraving of the man's name and regiment and the date. And until they are issued, they are literally valueless. 1942, 3, 4, that sort of time, Hancocks were charging £1.10, £1.50 in our modern language, to each of the services. And now a VC which may have cost those sorts of sums in 1943 could well be worth on the market £150,000 to £200,000. It does actually become priceless once it's been issued, because it can be identified for a particular man on a particular day in a particular action. And it's the history which is carried forward.
So, as a piece of jewellery, the Victoria Cross is worthless. But as Queen Victoria understood all along, the medal itself isn't important. It's the story that goes with it that matters. And back in Arnhem, Major Robert Cain's VC story was about to begin. Despite the losses suffered by Cain and the South Staffs in the German ambush earlier that day, the British still saw this as a setback rather than a defeat. And Cain's next task was to come here to a nearby hill called Den Brink. His orders were to seize the hill, hold it, and use the high ground to provide covering fire. Cain made it to the high ground no problem at all, but he and his men couldn't dig protective trenches because, unsurprisingly, the whole area was crisscrossed with tree roots. Look, they're everywhere, and all they had were these pathetic little trenching tools. So, they were completely exposed when the tanks came. It was another massacre. Tank shells and mortar fire rained down on Cain's men, who couldn't find any protection in the ground. For the second time in a day, he was forced to retreat, writing later, "It would have been a sheer waste of life to stay there. I felt extremely dejected. I knew our particular effort to get through to the bridge had been a failure." Cain took 100 men to the top of that ridge, but when he came down 90 minutes later, 40 of them were gone.
Wow.
Now, he says he was dejected, but eyewitnesses say he was anything but. They say he was bloody angry.
Real soldier right there.
Robert Cain, the affable man who bought the drinks in the bar, had now become an angry warrior. So is anger the fuel which stokes the fire of a VC winner?
Many VCs are won in the heat of the moment, and undoubtedly the adrenaline gets going and inspires people, but their emotions will come up to the top, and anger is likely to be one of them, because it will they've been seeing their own people being killed. But I believe very firmly that a VC winner has complete focus on the job in hand, and he may have these emotions, but he's got them under control. Anger without being under control is a useless emotion to have, but anger controlled and directed towards defeating the enemy is a most effective weapon.
This man is a classic example. In November 1965, Rambahadur Limbu, a Lance Corporal in the Gurkhas, was fighting in the...
Real quick, and I'm sorry I paused so much. I need to do a video on the Gurkhas because I've heard so many great stories about them. I'm saying this to remind myself later when I rewatch this. Make a video about the Gurkhas.
Indonesian War. During one battle, he ran across 60 yards of open ground, completely exposed to a hail of murderous machine gun fire, so he could rescue a wounded soldier. It seemed to onlookers like a suicidal run the first time, but then he did it all over again to come back with a second soldier. And then again for a third time to retrieve their Bren gun, which he used to charge down and kill the enemy. He won his Victoria Cross in just 20 minutes, and afterwards said that it was the anger of seeing his friends wounded that had driven him on. Limbu is a rare breed, one of only 15 VC winners who are still alive today.
They've all faced death in its most horrendous way, or most obvious way, and they've cheated death, and they don't have to prove anything to anybody. They're at peace with themselves.
If anyone can shed light onto the character of a VC winner, it's the secretary to the Victoria Cross and George Cross Association, Didi Graham. She's known more VC winners than anyone else.
The principal common quality amongst Victoria Cross holders I've known is an overriding humility and the huge inner strength, which doesn't need to show off or throw their weight around in any way at all.
Commander Ian Fraser typifies this modesty. In 1945, he and his crew piloted a midget submarine through 80 miles of mined waters in their mission to blow up the Japanese cruiser Takao. In order to sink it, they had to place their explosives right under its keel, but the operation went wrong when the tide went out and the 13,000-ton cruiser settled onto the tiny submarine, pinning it to the sea bed.
When we got stuck and the tide was going out and the cruiser sat down on us, then I really got worried, because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get out, because I was still determined to get out the other side. And we sort of went full ahead on the engine and full of on the motor, sorry, full ahead on the motor, full of and we dug a trench in the seabed by going backwards and forwards, and eventually we came out from underneath it.
Fraser and his crew did manage to blow up the cruiser and escape, and it's yet another amazing VC story. But he doesn't see it that way.
It always appeared to me that I was doing something that I'd been trained to do. I mean, I'd worked for months with this team of people that I had in the boat, 12 of them all together, only 4 in the boat at any one time. And we'd work for months on attacking ships, sticking limpet mines on things. Then you go and do it in an action, and they give you a VC for doing it. It all seemed, it always seems a bit odd to me.
I've never come across a Victoria Cross holder who said that they felt that they definitely did earn that award.
And that's common with our own Medal of Honor winners. You'll never find a prideful winner of that medal. And I don't know, it's amazing that they're such humble people considering that they've done such amazing things. And again, that goes back to the character of these people and just how good quality, you know, how good they are. That's the only way to really say it and to give it justice. So, yeah, it's amazing to me.
Another common characteristic is that they all seem to show a sense of responsibility.
There's an interesting statistic with the VCs, which is that 75% of them were the responsible child of an early widowed mother or the responsible child in a large family. So it means that they spent the whole of their childhood looking after their siblings or their mother. So they're used to looking after other people and not thinking of themselves.
I was feeling probably more for my soldiers than anything else, you know. I was just there. I was a secondary thing to the whole thing, and I was upset that I was losing soldiers, and the enemy was shooting my wounded.
In 1969, during the Vietnam War, Warrant Officer Keith Payne was leading a company of trainee soldiers when they were attacked and routed by massively superior Viet Cong forces. Separated from his fellow officers and wounded, Payne went behind enemy lines time and time again to rescue as many of his raw recruits as he could. That night, he saved the lives of 40 men.
Wow.
I felt that it was my responsibility to get my soldiers out of that situation and not ask anybody else to go and do it.
That's a good officer. That's like a quality officer right there.
So VC winners do seem to have some things in common, a responsibility for others and a temper perhaps. But does that mean they're all the same? Does that mean there's a type? Well, the truth is it's almost impossible to say. It could be something in the water. There's one street in Canada that's provided us with 3 winners. It could be something in the blood. 4 times it's been won by people whose brothers had already won it, and 3 times by people whose fathers had already won it. It's been won by rogues, scoundrels, introverts, extroverts, aristocrats. You probably think you don't have it in you to win one, but you probably do.
Once people do meet us, we're just ordinary people. They know we're ordinary people, and we're, you know, shave and all the rest of the things that people do. But I think they also recognise the fact that we've been tested and stood up to the test.
In Holland in 1944, Major Robert Cain had been tested twice, but worse was to come. This was the picture at Arnhem. 40 miles to the south, the Second Army, seen here in red, was bogged down. And with reinforcements unable to get through, the men holding the north end of the bridge were soon to surrender. Cain and the remaining airborne troops were ordered to pull back 3 miles west to the village of Oosterbeek. A horseshoe of defences was then erected in the hope of holding off the Germans until the Second Army could break through. So, picture the scene. Try to put yourself in the head of someone who was here that day. You were part of the largest airborne assault ever, but your mission has been a complete failure. That's the first thing. You were supposed to have been here 2 days, but you've been here for 4. You landed with 12,000 men, but at this point only 3,900 are left. So it's almost certain that you've watched close friends get killed. You've been fighting pretty much non-stop for those last 4 days, so it's unlikely you've had any sleep. You've no food. You're low on ammunition, and the Germans have cut off the water supply to the village that you're holed up in. And there's no way out of the village because you're surrounded on all sides by tanks and artillery and mortars and flamethrowers and 6,000 German troops. And then someone gets a radio working, and you find out that the Second Army, which was supposed to have been here 2 days earlier, is still 5 days away. Imagine how that must have felt. That sense of desolation and isolation, that sense of, well, we're going to die here. To make matters even worse, the RAF was dropping vital supplies of food and ammunition at prearranged landing zones, not realizing they'd been overrun by Germans. The British soldiers in Oosterbeek actually watched almost 90% of the drops fall into enemy hands. So the Germans must have felt optimistic, but they were reckoning without Robert Cain.
Okay, so we're actually going to have to end this video right here. And we're going to continue on the next part, part 3. I'm going to finish the rest of the episode completely. And so keep an eye out for that. Hopefully that will come out soon. Let's talk about this quickly. I don't know. I think it's amazing. Really, that's the best way I can phrase it. What these men have done. I'm excited to learn about this particular officer's story, about what he's going to do to help save his men. And yeah, I don't know. Nothing but respect for these people. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.